You're listening to Civic from the San Francisco Public Press. This November, San Francisco voters will decide on the future of a coastal roadway on the city's west side and whether or not to turn it into a full-time car-free space that could later become a park.
This is an opportunity to reimagine this section for the next century as an oceanside park.
Yet, not everyone feels the same way on this topic. In fact, this could be one of the most controversial propositions in the local race this year.
Half the neighborhood wants to keep it open and the other half wants to shut it down.
The simple question of how San Franciscans should use this space actually taps into a deeper sentiment many have felt over the years. We will hear from various residents on how they experience the space, either as a road or as a park, and explore why this has been so controversial. I'm Je Wu, and this is Civic. The Upper Great Highway is a 2-mile stretch of road along Ocean Beach on the western edge of San Francisco. It spans the Sunset District from Lincoln Way to Sloat Boulevard. During the week, it is a busy route for cars, but every weekend, starting at noon on Friday, it transforms into a recreational haven for pedestrians and cyclists. This November, a ballot measure is on the table, asking San Francisco voters if the city should extend this car-free period to the entire week, permanently closing the road to cars. One Friday afternoon, I walked down the Great Highway and heard what people thought, and they were divided.
I'm very for it.
It makes it a lot safer for kids. I have 2 young kids.
Closing completely doesn't make any sense. There would be no people here, and other cars will need to find out a way around. So I don't think there will be demand for it.
I think it would be great, and I think it would be great for the whole city, not just for the folks that live near Sunset. It'll be a draw, and it'll also make some preservation on the beach and the dunes.
We have a lot of foggy days out here where there's not going to be anybody coming Monday through Friday, that they think it's going to be this huge attraction, and I don't think that's going to be the case for the majority of people who come out here.
If I am the boss, I say, no, don't lock it, because I only see people walking. If the other said driving, doesn't make sense.
Most of us are just concerned that why shut it down 24/7 when there isn't a plan on what it's going to be done, let alone how it's going to be funded.
I feel for commuters, but I don't have a car, and I really love having it open for my son.
I think there's a mixed reaction about it. I actually don't know which way I'm going to vote yet.
Yeah, I know that it's highly controversial, and half the neighborhood wants to keep it open and the other half wants to shut it down.
Proposition K has sparked a new heated debate over the future of this iconic road, but the story began much earlier, back during the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic. At that time, the Board of Supervisors closed the Great Highway to vehicle traffic to create more space for residents to safely walk and bike while maintaining social distance. It was a popular decision back then, but as the pandemic eased, some residents began calling for the road to reopen to cars. The city ended up passing a 3-year pilot program as a compromise. Here's Joe Ingadio, the district supervisor representing the Sunset District, home to the Upper Great Highway.
The Great Highway would serve as a park on the weekend, then revert to a coastal highway during the week. But it's a temporary arrangement set to end in 2025. And as the deadline approaches, the question of what to do with the Great Highway will only intensify. City Hall will be forced to answer this question if it's not before voters.
Instead of the original plan of having the Board of Supervisors make a decision about the road's future, Ingadio, along with supervisors Myrna Malgar, Dean Preston, Raphael Mandelman, and Matt Dorsey, are bringing that decision to the voters with Proposition K. If it passes, it will decide the fate of the Upper Great Highway and start the process to permanently close the road to vehicle traffic.
This is an opportunity to reimagine this section for the next century as an oceanside park.
The upcoming ballot measure will not affect the Great Highway extension, the southern section of the Great Highway that connects the Sunset District to Daly City. That area is already slated for closure due to coastal erosion. It also won't affect the part of the roadway running along the western edge of Golden Gate Park, which connects the Sunset District to the Richmond District. Drivers will continue to have full access there. in a recent Board of Supervisors Rules Committee hearing. Engadio pointed out that the Great Highway extension closure presents an opportunity to rethink the 2-mile stretch of the Upper Great Highway that traverses the Sunset District.
The stretch from Lincoln to Sloat will have less utility as a direct connection to Daly City now that everything south of Sloat is closing no matter what. That's the lemon that we have. So do we turn this section into an oceanside park by creating a new traffic route with better flow? That's the lemonade we could make.
Passing Proposition K won't instantly create a permanent park. That requires approval from various local and state agencies to officially change the area's designated land use, and that could take up to a year. Only after that happens can San Francisco Recreation and Park apply for a permit to close the road to vehicles and plan for the park itself. The measure does not provide funding for this development. Still, politicians are supporting the proposition. Here's Engadio again.
Imagine the spillover effect of all those tourists visiting the Oceanside Park. Sunset businesses would see increased revenue as new customers hop off the train for lunch or dinner on their way to or from the park. The decision to tear down the Embarcadero Freeway was controversial 35 years ago, just as the decision about the Great Highway is today. I wonder, will the Great Highway for cars become as forgotten as the old Embarcadero Freeway? Will our kids and generations after them be able to imagine San Francisco without an oceanside park?
Not everyone is convinced by the prospect of an oceanside park. 71-year-old San Francisco native Tony Villa is among the skeptics. He is a Sunset resident who has been using the Great Highway as a convenient route for traveling north and south along the city's west side.
The other day when I had an appointment at urgent care in West Portal, and from West Portal I needed to pick up a prescription in the Richmond district. So from West Portal I just go down Sloat, I take the Great Highway, go up around the Cliff House and down into the Richmond district to the CVS pharmacy. When the Great Highway is closed, I have to go through all the surface streets, one street at a time.
The Upper Great Highway runs through the Sunset District with no on and off ramps, so there isn't direct access to the middle of the neighborhood. Because of that, and synchronized traffic lights, many drivers like using it as a fast shortcut through the district. A county traffic study shows that when the southern extension is closed, the Upper Great Highway could lose about 1/4 of its traffic. Yet some Sunset residents might still travel out of their way to use it.
A lot of people just take the Great Highway to go to the airport or anywhere on the peninsula going south, what have you. Santa Cruz, Monterey, any destination south. Because from the west side of the city, the only places you could connect to, say, Highway 280 is basically the Great Highway and 19th Avenue and part of Sunset Boulevard. So you're pretty restricted north to south.
And the section next to Golden Gate Park, which wouldn't be closing, is expected to see a significant reduction in traffic if cars can no longer drive on the Upper Great Highway. Most vehicles will likely divert east to cross the park using alternate routes, like the Chang of Lakes Drive. But as someone who has lived just blocks away from the Upper Great Highway for 44 years, Villa has another concern.
All these inner residential streets, normally quiet, now has all these cars roaring through, and it's created road rage. When you drive around the city, people don't even stop at stop signs anymore. People are speeding. It's nuts out there. And it's like they created this mess.
When the city began closing sections of the Great Highway during the pandemic, residents living on the Lower Great Highway noticed more cars zipping in front of their homes. The Lower Great Highway is the residential street that runs parallel to the roadway that Proposition K would close. In response, the city installed speed limit signs and speed bumps to make drivers slow down. A June report from the city's traffic agency suggests that those measures work, as the average vehicle speed has dropped about 20% from the pre-COVID-19 period. But Villa has a different take on it.
They were trying to say, oh, it's no problem. We'll put in speed bumps and this and that, no turns, no access, what have you. Well, they made a mess of everything. All these street traffic ended up in front of our homes. So all these people now, rather than take the lower grade highway, even a friend of mine says, I use 48th Avenue. He lives in Millbrae. Other people use 46th Avenue. Now, did they ask any of the residents who live here? No. Did they mention one word of it? No. And then now this thing where they came out with to put it on the ballot, Engardio did not say one thing to us.
Across the street, Viola's neighbor, 36-year-old Claire Bennett, has a different take. I spoke with her on a sunny Friday afternoon on the Upper Great Highway.
It was hard to find where someone's going to be. We're like, meet you at the Great Highway, or like, where? I'm trying to find a friend, but I think she's either behind me or ahead of me, and I don't know. Yeah. I'll wait for her to text me back.
Bennett and her friend planned to meet at noon when city workers put up barricades and closed down the road to cars. She was there with her 5-month-old baby.
I'm here with a stroller, which is not something I can normally do at the beach. Like, I can't push my baby on the sand in a stroller, so it's a really special thing to be able to come out here and meet my friends who are also with strollers and babies.
Bennett has lived in the city for 12 years and moved to the Sunset District around the time when she had her children during the pandemic. Her previous home in Coal Valley gave her an easier commute, but out here she enjoys having easy access to amazing outdoor spaces.
Sometimes, go to Trouble Coffee Shop when it was here and walk on the beach. Sometimes I would run through the park to the beach if it was the weekend or I had a long day. And those were really good memories that I had, and part of the reason that we moved out here, because we wanted to be in a walkable place. And this just makes it even better.
When Bennett first moved here, the Upper Great Highway was closed to traffic completely to give more space for people to get outdoors safely in a time of isolation. At the time, Bennett would often go out to the space to catch her breath in between work and taking care of family.
We did go more often, and we had a work-from-home schedule and still have a work-from-home schedule, so being able to come out for, during lunch hour and go for a short walk or 5 p.m. or something like that was nice. It was a little sad when they closed it down during the week, but I understand that was the compromise that worked.
If Proposition K passes, Bennett says she and her kids will enjoy using that stretch of the Upper Great Highway even more, and she fully supports the measure.
We have so much space in this city that is designated for cars to just pass through, and not enough space for people to use wheels and really be in a protected area. We've really enjoyed JFK being shut. We have 2 older boys, and when they were learning to ride a bike, it's very hard to do that in a bike lane. I would never put them in a bike lane just because of how cars behave in the city, and having a road that's fully closed was the perfect place to be able to learn how to bike and learn how to use a new scooter and things like that. There's just not that much space dedicated to that, and I think people, like you can see here, come out for this because it's really useful and really great. And you get to spend more time looking at the beach. It takes 5 minutes to drive this stretch, but if you walk it, it's an hour. So there's so much more appreciation that you get out of it.
Bennett is not the only one who feels this way. Heidi Mosesum, who lives by the Lower Great Highway, also loves the space. She is a strong advocate for Proposition K and canvasses different neighborhoods to gather more support for the measure most evenings when she's done with work.
We're volunteers with the SMK campaign. We went out in the Outer Sunset and the Outer Richmond. Have you heard about the proposition? I've lived in the Outer Sunset for 15 years, and in the last 4 years, since the Great Highway has been either a full-time park or a park on the weekends and holidays like we have now, it just completely transformed my experience of living there. I've met more neighbors and built more friendships with just the only thing I share in common with these people are neighbors often. I don't work with them. I haven't known them since college, but it's just they live in my neighborhood or they don't, and they just like being on the park, and that has been amazing.
Mosesum is a mother of 2. She says that she worries about her kids' safety. She needs to be vigilant when crossing the 4-lane highway to get to the beach. However, when the road was closed completely during the pandemic, she felt comfortable trying something new.
I had always liked environmentally the idea of biking, but was way too chicken and nervous of a cyclist to actually try bicycling on a road with cars, and particularly didn't want to do that with my kids on my bike if I wasn't very confident. But having this stretch of road where there were no cars, I was like, I can try this out. Like, if I fall over, I fall over, but a car is not going to run me over. The stakes felt a lot lower. So I started trying it on the Great Highway, got more confident, started doing it with my kids, and then through the whole period of time that we had that closed 24/7 during the week, I would take my kids to and from preschool on the back of our bike. And even when that space was given back to cars during the week, I kept up with that. And we replaced one of our cars with an e-bike, and we still use that. Like, that's how we get around the city now, is by bike. And so that experience for my family just made me be like, I'm not the only one for whom this is true. Like, there's probably a lot of people, they just need a space to feel safe doing this. And then if they can build that confidence, it can really, like, change the way people get around.
Moses says weekends on the Upper Great Highway feel like a river of humanity unfolding before her.
It is like the best people watching in the city. Like, San Francisco is known for being this creative, quirky city, and I feel like you get to see all of that out on the Great Highway. Like, there's the famous person who goes around in his Mario Kart outfit. There's people on skateboards kite surfing. There's people dance roller skating. You see kids learning to ride bikes. You see moms pushing strollers while roller skate dancing. Like, it's just the most incredible forms of creative expression, and people, you see seniors sitting there in their walkers lined up looking at the ocean, able to move along this flat paved space. There's nowhere else like it along the Pacific coast in one of the most beautiful, beloved cities in the world. And why on earth would we want that to go back to being a 4-lane highway that cars use just to whiz by, as opposed to a place that can really be a place where people build community and spend time and enjoy the coast instead of just zooming past it.
While some people say using the Upper Great Highway as a park space can bring communities together, others say that keeping it as a road helps communities stay connected.
Personally, I feel like the permanent closure is going to be cutting the ties between the communities in Richmond and Sunset. And it's going to have very negative implications, both socially and culturally.
Selena G has lived in Sunset for over a decade. Before that, she lived in the Richmond and in Chinatown. G knows that many in the Chinese community follow a similar path, beginning their journey in Chinatown, often referred to as 赏访, or landing on the wharf, or landing in Chinatown. Over time, many families, like Jews, move out of residential hotels, also known as SROs, short for single-room occupancy, and rent places in the Richmond district.
Main reason is because the number one bus, the California bus, actually brings us right into Chinatown. That's where we can shop for groceries, because we have particular taste when it comes to the kitchen and the ingredients, the sauce. We can find it in Chinatown. And the conveniency of the Richmond district, the number one bus, definitely makes the neighborhood a first pick. And the convenience of the bus lines on every single block, it really works out for us, and we rent there. We cannot afford to buy there, but we rent there.
The challenge for many of those families, including Jews, is that they cannot afford to buy a home in the Richmond district. Once families have saved enough to buy a home, many opt to move to the Sunset district, where they can afford to settle down and raise children. Ju followed that path, moving to the Sunset after spending 14 years in the Richmond.
For myself, I saved, and then I was able to relocate to the Sunset district. It's our home. That's where we're going to set our roots. However, we still have families who live in the Richmond district, and because there's only one Golden Gate part in between, so some of us living on the border in the Sunset or in the Richmond, we have like students going to District 1 or District 4 cross district to attend school. I think in addition to the family ties, but also the convenience of schools, and also myself also frequent services like for my doctor's appointment. My doctors are still in the Richmond. My dentists are also in the Richmond. And my favorite restaurants are in the Richmond because I lived there for a long time. It's not going to stop me from going there unless the road is closed and I have to spend my times with my kids in the car in order to get food. I have to reconsider, how frequent or if I should be going to the Richmond district.
Ji plans a visit to the dentist like a family day. She takes her kids, and after the appointment, they go to have boba tea and go to a restaurant on Gary Boulevard. And once in a while, she takes them to visit her extended family and have dim sum. In another call with Cho, she specified the importance of staying connected for her to maintain her cultural ties.
With Richmond and Sunset, there are families. There are families who are connected at this time. And then with Chinese culture, people actually, we're very sociable people with our own families.
Right.
You kick go yangsa, and you do a lot of social work on the weekend. You connect with your family. You need to check out your parents, your elderly parents, and then go to your cousins. There's a lot of things that we do on the weekend.
But she fears that days like that might be less likely with the road closing permanently.
How often are you willing to sit in your car and wait half an hour at least, sometimes 45 minutes to cross the Golden Gate Park? I did that with my kids, asking, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Because something that should be 5 minutes turned into 45 minutes. Sitting in the Golden Gate Park trying to cross that road to the other side, it was frustrating. It was stressful. How many times can you sit there and do that? Or are you going to find somewhere else to shop, to support?
Sophie Shao lives in the inner Richmond neighborhood and has a different experience. Crossing the Upper Great Highway from car traffic on the weekends gives her more reason to cross through Golden Gate Park and attend events in the Sunset.
I think the most recent experience where I visited was a few weeks ago during the terrible night market, where they had all the food stands and music performances along the Great Highway. It was held on the Upper Great Highway and the Lower Great Highway, and I saw that people were just grabbing a beer, by the highway, and some people were sitting on the sand dunes, listening music, singing along, talking to each other. So it was a very relaxing environment where I felt like there was a sense of community. So I truly enjoyed that experience. And my husband, I remember my friend and husband, they were there for the first time for this kind of event. So they were both like, wow, this is amazing.
Xiao is in her early 30s. 2 years ago, she and her husband moved here from Beijing to stay with her in-laws and start their family. Now she has a 1-year-old baby.
As parents, we don't really get to go out at night that much to chill with friends. We don't get to go to the bars or nightclubs anymore. That was back in our 20s. So we spend a lot of time just staying home, looking after our baby, or most of the time we're taking our kid to a place, which is fun for the kid, but hard for us to truly relax.
That night left a great impression on Xiao and her husband. Back in Beijing, Xiao and her family would often go to the nearby province and spend time by the beach for summer vacation.
Just playing with our dog, enjoying a beer, a drink in the seaside. So that part of it, the memory was very precious to us. And we haven't really had a chance to recreate that kind of experience here until we found the Great Highway.
Unlike her husband, who was born here in San Francisco and knows the city well, Xiao is new to the place and the vibe.
San Francisco, as a big city, it actually has a slower pace of life and more balance of life compared to places like Hong Kong, Beijing, New York. And those are all, mega cities that I've lived in. At those cities, it's just the urban life is so fast-paced and you're living in concrete jungles. But here, you come here, you actually have real jungles. And then you have the ocean, you have the beach, you have really great weather throughout the year. I think, of course, when I first came here, I felt pretty depressed because I was very used to the hustles and bustles of big city life. Even though it was tiring me out, my whole body was just used to, seeing high skyscrapers and lots of people. So when I first came here, I felt very underwhelmed.
She began building connections by getting involved locally, going to church, and attending events on local politics. Through that, she learned about the campaign to close the Great Highway permanently and make it a park.
I'm interested in this cause, and then it seems easy for me to become involved because they're always looking to reach the Chinese community and looking for people who have the language skills. So after becoming involved in this campaign, all of a sudden I'm meeting so many neighbors from the Sunset and the Richmond district. And many of them are not, some of them are Asians and some of them are not. So by becoming involved in this campaign, I felt like I built community with people who live in the neighborhood. To the extent I'm like, wow, I know so many people from the Sunset. Should I just move there?
Now, Xiao is the one introducing new friends to her husband. She used to rely on him to drive her around the city. But with more events to attend, she started riding an e-bike to cross Golden Gate Park on her own.
Deep in the Chinese tradition that people like to just hang out with their immediate family because we used to live in these small villages where all your neighbors are your cousins or your aunties and uncles, 姑姑, 七大姑八大姨.
Xiao is a positive psychology instructor trained in Tsinghua University, one of the best universities in China. One thing she observes is that casual relationships with people outside of our immediate families are also important.
And so that's why I think the Great Highway holds great potential for building those neighborhood relationships. We've already seen people having met neighbors this way. And in fact, this is the number one story I hear from supporters of the Great Highway. They always say that during the pandemic or, afterwards, they met someone from their neighborhood they didn't know because of strolling on the Great Highway, organizing events. A Cantonese young couple living in the Sunset, they met a bunch of neighbors during the terrible night market, and they got invited to one of their house to hang out. And everybody was excited that, oh, we're all neighbors. I didn't know. So I think this is the picture that we hold for why we want the Great Highway. And honestly, I think this is a healthy dose of community building that the Chinese community needs for survival or for thriving.
The space served a different purpose for 35-year-old Jennifer John, who also lives in the Richmond neighborhood.
I use the Great Highway every day to go to work. I work down in Pacifica, so I use it Monday through Friday morning to get to work, and then Monday through Thursday to come back home. Friday afternoon it closes at 12, so then I have to take an alternate route to get back home afterwards.
John is a teacher at a public school in Pacifica, where she teaches language arts, science, social studies, and journalism.
I'm normally leaving my house in the Richmond district from anywhere between 7:15 to 7:30 at the latest. And I take Great Highway to get to work all the way down, and I take it straight through past Float in order to go on the Skyline. And then coming home, it kind of depends on when I leave, but normally sometimes at 5, sometimes a little later, sometimes a little bit earlier. But I take it coming home, kind of the same route that I had taken going to work, going from Skyline to Great Highway to go back to the Richmond district.
Even when the southern section is closed for construction, June still prefers the Upper Great Highway because the 2-mile stretch has less cross-traffic and feels safer to drive compared to Sunset Boulevard, which gets busy during the day because it's close to many schools.
So Monday through Thursday, it takes me, assuming there's no traffic, 25 minutes. But on a Friday, and also depending on which way I go, but it could take sometimes up to 30, 35, 40 minutes.
But if John used the alternate route on Sunset Boulevard, that'd take her an extra 15 minutes. Most of the traffic backup she sees is in the area where people turn right into the park. The sponsor of Proposition K, Supervisor Ingadio, talks about introducing traffic improvements where drivers need to pass through the park.
How many traffic lights are going to bring on Lincoln Way?
Right, probably 3 at the most. Yeah.
The reason for adding traffic lights is that they will allow pedestrians to cross safely, while also helping traffic flow better. Yet it's unclear when that improvement would be made. June actually enjoyed using the Upper Great Highway as a park on weekends.
From my personal experience, having grown up with the Great Highway, always been open as a kid, walking along the other side paths that are available for walking. I mean, I would love for it to stay open at least during the week the way it kind of is now. And then on weekends, I can understand why they would want to close it, because I've been there on the weekends now as an adult with, friends to go walk and ride bikes, and for friends who like roller skate and stuff. So, I mean, I understand why people would like it to be closed, but during the weekday, I mean, especially as a way to get through the city, considering going from on the western side, like going, I guess, the major roadways, it's, at least to me, like it's an easier way of getting from one part of the city to the other.
Yet, as a fourth-generation Chinese American living in the city, June and her family see the Upper Great Highway as more than just a convenient route. It is also a vital link to her culture.
Growing up, I remember when Ranch 99 opened up, the easiest way to get there is just to go down Great Highway, because then you can just go on the Skyline afterwards. I know some people do take Sunset, but, that's the easiest one. I have a lot of family who lives in, like, the San Francisco Daly City borderline area, in Daly City or in Pacifica. It's our way of kind of just getting there faster.
Similarly, her mother, Lauren John, uses the highway a lot. She's retired now, but she drives in and out of the city regularly to help her own mother and to babysit for her other daughter.
I try to go see her like on Wednesdays, because then I take her shopping, and then sometimes I go on Sunday to help her put out her garbage, just kind of clean up. And then a lot of times we just go over to drop dinner off to her maybe every other day.
The idea that the Great Highway keeps Chinese American families connected even as members move to different neighborhoods or other cities resonates with Lauren John.
For me, buying in the outer Richmond at the time I bought, which was a long time ago, my children can't afford that anymore. So then they were able to find something in the Sunset. So you've got the two families here who want to stay in San Francisco. Again, the Great Highway is the connector between that.
Okay, thank you all for being here today. If you don't know already, this is our message right here. Keep the Great Highway open.
While a lot of Chinese Americans like Xiao see the potential of transforming the Upper Great Highway as a space for family and human connection, the proposition faces a lot of resistance from within this group. Ed Ho, who lives in the Sunset District, explains where that sentiment might be coming from.
I've been here a long time. I've lived in Northern California almost my whole life, and I've seen all of the changes. Back to 1989, when we had the earthquake, a lot of roads were closed after that point, and no other mitigations were implemented. So it's been getting harder and harder to drive for decades. So a lot of the frustration and anger that you're going to hear about this issue has roots in decades of the same types of decision-making that are happening right now.
One event he mentioned was the takedown of the Embarcadero Freeway, a decision that faced significant resistance from the Chinese American community at the time, and many people still see it as an injustice. However, politicians who view the freeway's removal only in a positive light have since used that history to promote the future of the Great Highway. Ho supports the removal of the Embarcadero Freeway, but he knows that it took 40 years to build the Central Subway as part of the mitigation plan to improve transit to Chinatown following the freeway's removal. He worries that there will be no mitigation plan for those who need to travel south after the closure of the Upper Great Highway.
There's also one little road that crosses Golden Gate Park. It's called Chain of Lakes. And on weekends, you'll see that road is so jammed up with cars. It's almost like walking. That's how fast you can go. It's adding a lot of pain and frustration to the lives of ordinary local San Franciscans. And like I say, it's a lot of Chinese live in the Sunset and the Richmond. We are one of the biggest constituencies of people that have to get across the park. And I don't believe the park was ever intended to be a barrier. Chinese in general in the city of San Francisco are not heard. the political power in this city is generally not with Chinese, or not proportionally at least. Chinese are like 30% of San Francisco. We do not get 30% of the voice. Okay. And a lot of the transportation decisions have been anti-car, and a lot of Chinese are families with children, with seniors who have a lot of need to drive cars, not to mention just getting to work. So Chinese silently suffer. Every time that hurts driving, Chinese, we're forced to take it, okay? A lot of Chinese live in Richmond. A lot of Chinese live in the Sunset. We need to get across the park to go visit family, bring our kids to school, shopping, whatever it is. We need to get across the park. And again, they don't listen to us. They don't even ask, okay? Yeah. So this is a difficult thing to quantify or get evidence to support. If you've lived here for decades, you would understand. This is not the first time this kind of thing has happened.
Where voters live and travel regularly, where they're coming from, and what they envision for the future greatly affects their perspectives on how San Francisco should use this public space, either as a park or as a roadway. Opinions on Proposition K are undoubtedly stronger among people who live in the West Side, especially near the Upper Great Highway, because they will feel the effects of this election outcome more directly. And at the end of the day, they will have to live with a decision made by voters citywide. For more about what's on the San Francisco ballot, check out our voter guide at sfpublicpress.org. I'm Zhe Wu, and you have been listening to Civic. Civic comes to you from KSFB LP 102.5 FM in San Francisco, a project of the San Francisco Public Press, a nonprofit investigative newsroom. Find the companion article for this episode and all our reporting at sfpublicpress.org. Our theme music is by John Dillon. Additional music was supplied by the Blue Dot Sessions. Our team includes producer Liana Wilcox, KSFP Program Director Mel Baker, and Executive Director Laila Lahoud. Civic airs Tuesday and Thursday at 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. on KSFP. New episodes on Thursday. Thanks for listening.